Hello folks, Scott here with the My Monthly Hero September 2021 kit. Here comes the sun. With some nice tissue paper wrapped around our kit this month. We are treated to a very large sunflower stamp. Let's pull this out of the packaging and take a look at what we've got this month. This is our 4" by 6" stamp set with these 4 big, beautiful sunflowers. A thank you, hello there. You're a bundle of sunshine, and here comes the sun. I love that. We also get a frame cut for that image and 2 fancy sentiment dies. HELLO. This one says thanks, with a shadow die as well. So you could cut the outlines, cut the inners. That's our dies. We've also got a pack of goodies. Now, I don't think we've ever gotten layering stencils in a My Monthly Hero kit, but this month we get layering stencils that will color our stamp set. There's layer 1, layer 2, that's right, layer 3 for the centers of the flowers, layer 4 for leaves and center definition, and layer 5 for more leaves. They all have registration holes in the corner, so it should be easy to line those up, and you can use those to color your stamp. Your whole stamp, this will color the entire stamp, the leaves, the flowers. I don't think I have any actual layering stencils in my stash. This will be my first batch. Of course, they give us some ink cubes to go along with this, and to color our sunflowers, we've got Butter Bar, Caramel, Root Beer, and Key Lime Fizz. This is the reactive ink. The Root Beer is the reactive ink. These are just the dye inks. And we get another Hero Arts blending brush. This is the smaller Hero Arts blending brush. I believe the bigger brush we got a couple of months ago. Beautiful brushes. That's everything in our kit this month. It's going to take me a little bit of brain power to come up with 10 different cards using this one image, but I will do my best. At least we've got a couple of great little fancy sentiment dies. Here comes the sun. I certainly hope so. Now, of course, our My Monthly Hero kit has this handy little stencil guide on the back. It shows us our 5 stencils that we've got in the kit: Butter Bar, Caramel, Root Beer, and then these are all done with the Key Lime Fizz reactive ink. That's their suggestion on how to color this stamp with the included stencils. So this is how I got started. I didn't want to have to fiddle with lining up the little registration marks. These are the little squares on the corners of our stencils. So I took my Misty, and I'm flipping this over to the back, to the black foam side, and putting my stencil in the corner, all the way down in the corner. I'll go ahead and throw a magnet on that. And then I'm going to take the stamp, and I'm going to slot that stamp into the stencil. You can literally feel that stamp slot right into that stencil. Even without the leaves in the stencil, those 4 large sunflowers will hold that stamp exactly where you want. So now theoretically, I should be able to lift up this stamp with the lid and stamp perfectly on the stenciled coloring. So let's give it a try. I'll flip back to the other side, put this in the corner, tight in the corner, stick my magnet on there. We'll go with their first suggestion, Butter Bar. We'll use Butter Bar for our very first. I guess we need some cardstock behind there, don't we? This is a 5.5 by 8.5" sheet of cardstock, just so I have plenty there. It fits in my standard Misty just fine. I am using some ink brushes. This is my yellow one. Yellow is so easy to get caught up into other colors. I go ahead and start right in the center of all of these sunflowers, just because their edges of their leaves should be the littlest bit brighter, a little bit less yellow than the center. But this gets covered up with lots and lots and lots of color, so it doesn't matter a whole lot. We'll just do this very quickly, making sure that that stencil stays down in the corner with our cardstock. There's stencil number 1 in Butter Bar. We'll move to stencil number 2, which is done in the caramel. Slot it right down there in the corner. Both your cardstock and your stencil are nice and tight down into this corner. I'm not worrying about the registration marks. And do the caramel. I'll do it the exact same way as far as starting in the center and then moving out. Because the center of these sunflowers has that great big round seed pod that's going to cover up if you get any blotches in the center. That will cover that up. I do this layer using the caramel ink cube that's included in our kit. We'll move to stencil number 3, which is the center of the flowers. See, it all fits so nicely together, just tucking it right down there in the corner. We're going with the root beer this time. This time I'm going to start on the outside and try and work my way in to keep the center of those possibly just a little bit lighter than the edges. I love stencils with this reactive ink because you can kind of pick up the ink from the stencil and push it onto the paper, and your stencil comes out almost clean at the end. Look at that, almost clean. We're going to move on to stencil number 4, what they call stencil number 4, which I have labeled as 5, but that's just me. Look at that. It fits perfectly. Now for the leaves, they suggest doing 1 layer in key lime fizz and the second layer in a little bit heavier key lime fizz. So anytime you layer up your colors together, they're definitely going to get darker. We're going to start at the shadow lines, or where the leaves connect to the flowers, because they're behind the flowers, so that should be a little bit darker than the tips of the leaves. So we'll do that on all of these little leaf clusters and color the leaves very lightly. This one's almost behind everything, so I'm coloring that quite dark. That's way in the background. Let's add a little bit more to the edges of these. That's our 4th stencil, or 5th if you want. I think you can interchange these. That's with the key lime fizz. We pull that off, perfectly stenciled inside those flowers. This is our last stencil that gives us the center of the flowers and a little definition on the leaves. So Hero Art suggests doing the leaves and the center of the flowers with the key lime fizz. So that's what we're going to do. You could take some time and make sure that these inks actually dry between each layer, but I'm not worried about a little blending with what colors underneath. I think that will probably help the coloring. There we go. I'm going to give one more round to our flower centers. Okay, that looks good to me. Everything should be colored as according to the stencils. And look at that. Beautiful. Now, if we lined this up correctly, we should be able to stamp our stamp on top of that. That looks pretty good to me. I'm going to grab my intensified black ink, Make sure everything's nice and tight down into the corner. This is the moment of truth. That's our black outline. There you go. I don't see how it could be much more perfect than that. I'm going to go over this again. Make sure everything's down tight in the corner. One more stamp. This edge needed it, and this edge needed it, and right here needed it. And there we go. Perfectly colored, perfectly stamped, and I didn't have to worry about those registration marks. So once you have this set up and you've got your stamp in the correct place, you know you can just keep stamping and keep stenciling using the bottom corner of your MISTI to hold all your stencils in place. So that's what I did, and I went a little crazy. This is stenciled and stamped according to the suggestions on our backer card. I went through and did a whole bunch of these since this was all set up. And this was the first one that I actually did, that I actually stamped the black ink first, and then I went in with our colors. I didn't let that black ink dry adequately, and it really doled down the yellow on this. But that's kind of interesting, really kind of a nice sepia tone to that if you want. So then I started experimenting with some different ink colors. This is Butter Bar, and then Wild Honey, and then the Root Beer, and Green Apple Reactive for the dark parts of the leaves. The Walnut Stain, I also did the center part of the flowers, and then stamped the outline with that Walnut Stain Distress Oxide ink. I actually did add a little bit of black on the center stamped parts using that small ink cube. So there's a little bit of more definition there. The rest of the outlines are all brown. So that's my third one. Then I wanted to try another one. This one is Butter Bar and Caramel and Root Beer. And then the leaves are Bundled Sage and Peeled Paint Distress Oxide inks. I really kind of like that color of leaves with this, although I think sunflowers actually have really green leaves. I used Black Soot Distress Oxide ink for the center part of our seed pods, and then Intense Black ink for the stamping of the outline. Really like this one. This one has a lot of contrast, really strong contrast in that one. And then let's play with some other colors. Here's some lovely pink sunflowers. I couldn't resist. This is all Distress Oxide inks. This is Tattered Rose, and then Worn Lipstick. And then we have Abandoned Coral for the center of the flowers. Then Bundled Sage and Peeled Paint for the leaves. Those colors worked really well with these pink flowers. Then I stamped all of the outline in Aged Mahogany Distress Oxide ink. And then, just for a little bit more detail, I went in with some black intensified ink in the center of the flowers. And how about some blue ones? Okay, so this is all with Hero Arts inks. This is Soft Sky and Dusty Blue and Early Dawn Reactive ink. Then we have Thistle Reactive ink twice on the flowers here, which is purple. And I didn't care a lot for that, so I took the Key Lime Fizz on top of the purple and turned those to a nice kind of a crispy brown. These definitely look like winter flowers here. And then I used a soft granite ink for the outline and added some touches of black to the center of the flower stamp. That's our pretty winter blue sunflowers. And then, of course, I had to color a couple of these. I couldn't rely on the stencils all by themselves. So I grabbed my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers and colored one image with my alcohol markers. Here's a quick pic of the markers that I used for this. Really a pretty easy stamp to color with markers. This went really pretty smoothly, very quickly. I think you get a little bit more realism when you color those individually. It's not quite so perfectly laid out. And then I did one more that I watercolored. I actually used the Daniel Smith Hero Arts palette dot card to watercolor this arrangement of sunflowers. I really like this one. I think I like this one even better than the alcohol colored one. I think I like that even better Then my favorite stamped and stenciled one. Now I've got a whole bunch of sunflower clusters to play with. I even went in and I did stamp one sunflower cluster and embossed that with some gold embossing powder. So I may use that just plain white on gold. We've got 10 cards to make out of this one image. I think this should get us started pretty well. And here we have my 10 sunflower cards for this month. All white card bases, one craft card base. Let's plow right into these. My first card, we have a thanks card. This sunflower is the one I just colored for you, that very first panel that I did, that I stamped after I did all of the stenciling, that I die cut with the matching die. I cut a piece of this this is really terrific textured, I think it's called fiber cardstock pack that I have. It's really nice, really soft. It has this great texture on it. I die cut a piece of that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, glued that to my white card base. Then I mounted my die cut sunflowers with some foam tape. I die cut the thanks a couple of times from some black cardstock, glued those two pieces together, glued those right across the center of our sunflowers there. Pretty straightforward. I think this is what they were shooting for with this card kit. A lovely thanks card with some actually beautiful sunflowers. So then card number 2, another white card base, and we've got a hello there card. This hello there, of course, is one of the sentiments in our stamp set. This is the sunflower image that I colored the caramel, the darker part first, and then did the butter bar over the top of that. And that's with the Distress Oxide leaves. Again, I die cut that out with the matching die. Found this piece of great matching pattern paper in my stash that's 2.5 inches wide, 5.5 inches tall. Glued that down to my card base, mounted the sunflowers on top with foam tape, stamped the sentiment using intense black ink. I think this is probably my favorite stenciling of all the colored stencils that I did. Hello there! This kind of looks like a whole field of sunflowers in the back of them. Card 3. This is the very first sunflower that I stenciled, where I stamped the outline first and then stenciled it. Got it a little sepia toned, I think, but it comes out really nice on this hello card. This is the big die hello on the top here, and this is that sunflower that I think got some of the outline into the butter bar yellow part of that and tinted it down, kind of sepia toned there. I die cut that stamp out, and then I cut it from leaf to leaf, turned the bottom piece around and put it on the side. So there's some foam tape behind the edges, but the flat edges are glued flat to the cardstock there. A nice hello card. I did use that key lime fizz to ink blend on the card front itself in a little bit of the shape of our arrangement here. This hello is die cut 4 times from some white cardstock and glued all together, and then the top layer is colored again with that same key lime fizz reactive ink. I think that key lime background really makes these rather dull sunflowers really kind of pop, and I love this arrangement on the side here. Hello, a great big hello. I think I've mentioned how big that stamp is. It barely fits on an A2 card, but I was terrifically surprised to find out that it actually fits quite well on a slimline card as well. So this is my slimline version, and we've got another thanks card with that gold embossed stamping on white cardstock. Really, really nice. I die cut the embossed sunflower right down the center and then cut little slivers off their side to make some right corners. This is actually the bottom of the stamp in the top corner. This is the top of the stamp in the bottom corner. This is a 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch slimline card. This is a piece of pitch black cardstock cut to 3 inches by 6 inches, glued on the card front. The 2 corners of our stamp are glued flat down into the corners, leaving a little bit of a black mat on their edges. The thanks is die cut from some really nice textured gold cardstock that I found in my stash. I die cut that from the gold. I die cut it once from white, glued those two together, glued those down to my card front. Very little dimension here, almost a totally flat card. I love these mini slimline cards. They're so cute, and I'm actually surprised. This is how much of that stamp I didn't use. is that little piece there and that little sliver there. That is all of the stamp that didn't get used on this card. I think that's just shocking that 98% of that stamp is on that little slimline card. Okay, this one was totally inspired by the sentiment itself. This is for all my friends in New Mexico and in the greater Southwest. On another white card base, we've got Here Comes the Sun with a sunflower coming up behind the buttes and vistas of the great Southwest. I couldn't resist this. I fussy cut this flower. That's the second flower in our arrangement. I fussy cut this from my sunflowers that I did with the butter bar and then the wild honey, where there's not quite so much contrast between the two colors in the leaves. I fussy cut that out. I covered that with a bunch of Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I think you can see that there. I remembered, of course, that old My Monthly Hero April 2019 card kit had that terrific Venice fancy die that actually, when turned upside down, makes a great southwestern vista. This is that die as you would normally use it, is the city of Venice. But if you take the negative of that and turn it upside down, it's a great southwestern vista for you. I took a panel of white cardstock and I ink blended some lemon drop, creamsicle, and fruit punch reactive ink on the top part, and then I ink blended a little antique linen and frayed burlap below our die cut there. I added the fussy cut sunflower with glue on the bottom, a little foam tape on the top. I added foam tape to our die cut vista, and then of course stamped some of the birds, which of course are from that same stamp set. Stamped those birds using, again, the walnut stain Distress Oxide ink, which is what the outline of our little sun is stamped in. I stamped the sentiment with the same ink on a scrap of white cardstock, die cut that with a Lawn Fawn Everyday Messages die. Here comes the sun. Do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun, and I said, I couldn't resist. Oh, that makes me giggle. I think that sunflower is really interesting as a sun coming up behind the mountains. We have those crazy colored sunflowers now, another white card base, and we've got a lovely Valentine's card. Happy Valentine's Day with our pink sunflowers. Cut those straight down the center, kind of leaf to leaf. Put the left side on the bottom, put the right side on the top. Again, those are glued flat on their straight edges with little pieces of foam tape along their cut edges to give them a little dimension. This is on a piece of peony cardstock that's cut to 4 inches by 5.5 inches and glued down to our A2 card base. I stamped the sentiment. The sentiment is from the January 2020 My Monthly Hero kit. Happy Valentine's Day. I stamped that in aged mahogany ink, and I also embossed that as well for a little shine with some clear embossing powder. A few pink gems from my stash. We've got a really nice Happy Valentine's Day card. I tell you, those almost don't look like sunflowers at all. And those blue flowers, I was really attracted to those blue flowers. They looked so wintry. So this is what I came up using, the blue sunflowers. We've got every winter has its spring. I really like that a lot. We've got a piece of Hero Hues Arctic cardstock cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4, glued to our white card base. This is an old piece of snowflake pattern paper from my stash. I cut that pattern paper with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die and printed this sentiment on it using my Silhouette software and the Rockwell font and the Times New Roman italic font. Printed those down in the bottom corner of my pattern paper and then glued that on top of the Arctic cardstock. I die cut our blue sunflowers, cut off a little bit at the bottom, not very much, gosh, only that much, only that much, and put it at a jaunty angle, attached that down with some foam tape, added some of the Hero Hues clear dots, enamel dots, the clear dots to give us a little bit more feeling of icy winter. These really seem like they're frozen in time. I love those leaves. They look so crispy and so fall-like, and that's combining the purple thistle ink and the key lime fizz ink. Very interesting. Love those leaves. Love this sentiment. Every winter has its spring. What a great encouragement card. Really pretty card. And these hardly look like sunflowers either. Okay, I've still got more sunflowers to go. I colored so many of them. It was so easy to do that stenciling in the corner of my Misty that I kind of went to town. So this next card, I wondered, this is a big stamp, but I wondered if we could actually cover the front of a card with sunflowers. So for this card, we've got "You're a Bundle of Sunshine," which is one of the sentiments from our stamp set. And yes, we do cover the whole front of this card with sunflowers. Now, this is actually the leftover pieces that I fussy cut this sunflower out of. So this is the butter bar and the wild honey stenciled piece. There's a little bit over here. There's a little bit of it down there. I glued all that flat to my white card base, and then I die cut. Of course, this is my alcohol marker colored sunflowers. I die cut that, added some foam tape to it, trimmed off just a little bit of its edges, and added it on top of that. Interesting. I think this really gives some fun dimension. These kind of feel like they're further back, especially in real life. I don't know how the camera's picking up on that. Since they're softer colored, they do appear a little further in the background. "You're a Bundle of Sunshine." I stamped that with intense black ink and used some clear embossing powder on that for just a little bit of shine, and then a couple of little glitter peel-offs on the bottom of that, just to highlight our sentiment a little bit. You're a bundle of sunshine, if that ain't a bundle of sunflowers. Okay, I still have my watercolored sunflower to do. And I was realizing that, gosh, you don't have to die cut these sunflowers to use this stamp. So I finished my watercolor and colored a background behind my watercolored sunflowers. I think that really makes the sunflowers pop. I cut that down to size. I added this thin little border on the edges. I had this already die cut. This was cut with an Altenew Fine Frames cover die, a little bit of gold glitter on that, and that still gave me just a little bit of room for a black mat behind that. So I was kind of treating this like a piece of art. I actually considered signing it on the bottom. But I think the little gold frame and little black mat around that really highlights that. I rarely make a card without a sentiment on the front, but I just couldn't bring myself to stamp anything on the front of this. So I stamped it on the inside. Thank you. Nice thank you card. This will have to go to someone very special or someone who did something very special. And then, of course, I realized you could just stamp these sunflowers directly on a card front. Our last card here, I really like this, is a hello card with our sunflower stamped on craft cardstock and embossed with gold embossing powder. Isn't that nice? It really works well with that craft cardstock. This is the top corner of the stamp, top corner of the stamp, bottom corner of the stamp, bottom corner of the stamp. I was really pleased with how tightly I was able to get those two stamps to join up together right there. That leaf is sticking right between the petals on that flower. Using the stamp in the four corners like that actually almost filled up the whole front of this card. I die cut the shadow part of the hello die 4 times from matching craft cardstock, glued those together, die cut the hello with a smooth gold mirror cardstock, glued those all together, glued those flat to our card. Hello. We're all golden sunflowers inside. A nice quote from Allen Ginsberg. Can you believe that? I found this quote and I was like, that quote is what inspired this golden sunflower card. Hello. We are all golden sunflowers inside. Yes, we are all the same inside. Really like how that came out. That's my 10 cards using the My Monthly Hero September 2021 card kit. I did manage to use all of the stamps Wasn't that hard? I used all of the dies except I don't think I used the Thanks shadow. I didn't use the Thanks shadow, so almost all of that. I love these stencils. These will go in my stash anytime I need a sunflower. So many people like sunflowers. Anytime I need a sunflower or anything like that, I will turn to these for quick, easy, very colorful, very gorgeous cards. I really had a great time with Kit this month, and ultimately when you lay them all together, they don't all look the same. Of course, they all look like sunflowers, but I think there's enough variety here. We've got, a few thank you cards, a nice encouragement card, Valentine's Day card, lots of hellos, lots of thank yous, lots of sunshine, lots of sunflowers. This kit is still available at Hero Arts. If I've managed to capture your imagination or perhaps inspired an idea or two from you, please use my links in the description down below. If you want to go grab one of these kits for yourself, this is one of the greatest values of the My Monthly Hero kit that they've had in a while. What with all of the stencils and the blending brush and the ink cubes and the stamps and the dies, a really great value for the only $34.99 that the kit costs. And there's still some there. Go grab one if you like sunflowers and you don't like coloring them. These stencils work so good. I will definitely play with more layering stencils in the future. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. You know how much I appreciate your encouragement and support. Let me know which cards you like best. And remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, I send you and yours love and light and happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.